Hey, I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackyou.com, and today we're going to install the BMC air filter in our 2018 STG BMW S1000RR Corona Apocalypse Edition project bike. It is snowing here today in Michigan. Granted, it's not sticking on the ground. It is snowing. I also just ordered a new snowmobile today, believe it or not, and it is April 15th. Corona Apocalypse, April 15th. Today we're going to dive in and we're going to install the BMC air filter on Jimmy's BMW S1000RR. This is the first time I've done this, so we're going to do this together. In order to get the fuel tank off, we need to take off the rider seat. In order to do that, you have to kind of fold up the rear ear of the rider seat so you can get this fastener out. There's going to be one on either side. And once we get the seat off, then we can begin working on the tank itself. Hopefully we're all back on track here pretty soon, riding. So we need to get this bike all done. So Jimbo's got something to ride. I'm gonna confess right now, there's sometimes the shit we show you on camera, and then there's sometimes the shit I do for real, okay? This seat is going to be one of those moments. I started by taking it off by hand, and I realized that bolt's 400 feet long. I brought out the screwdriver. So once you have the seat off, then we can start working on this cowl here. That shroud that goes around the tank on both sides. Caleb's just going to kind of follow me around here. You know, I do really prefer not to be using the screw gun on this stuff. The reason behind that is, you know, it can be a little harder on the fastener. And these kind of fasteners, right, especially if it's a race bike, you're going to be taking these things off, putting them back on somewhat frequently. And the more you can do to keep that fastener in good shape, the better off you're going to be. For that reason, the hand tool is typically the best option, except for if we're talking about those damn seat bolts, because they're just way longer than they need to be. I mean, it's not like the seat's gonna fly off, right? We do also have a complete video where we're removing all the bodywork on this BMW. We've got that on the site, as well as our YouTube channel. Back here, we have like a little Christmas tree clip on either side. From here, it slides forward. So once you have those loosened up, you put a little forward pressure on this. And that can come off as a unit. You can see I left the screws at the very front of it still in there, kind of holds the assembly together. And now on to the fuel tank itself. The air filter should be somewhere in this area here. You know, it actually might be right up front here. Man, oh man, so maybe the fuel tank can stay on. This is the moment when you realize this is legitimately the first time I'm doing this. I have not went ahead and really researched this one quite a bit. And I got to tell you, that does look like that's all housed right there. The ECU is on top here. So let's dig into this a little bit and see if we can't make this happen. Okay, so we've determined for sure the air filter is right here. It is standing straight up and down. Got your ram air up front, air filter in between, air box on the back side. So it doesn't appear that we have to take the fuel tank off of this thing at all. Looks like we have enough disassembled to do what we need to get done. The ECU needs to be removed and or come out of the way. We have a fastener up here in the front that holds the mounting bracket down. We're going to pull that. All right, loosen up the mounting bracket. And then we have clearly a split harness here. One side of the harness comes from the brake side of the bike. The other side of the harness is coming from the clutch side. So we're going to need to unplug the forwardmost connector. And that's going to allow us to move the ECU, manipulate it over to the left side of the bike, giving us access then to the air filter housing. To disconnect this connector, you need to pull forward here. And then once you have it far enough forward that it's released, you can then pull outward. You can see the harness that comes from the left side. We have a connector that comes off of it. And then we need to disconnect that. And this will then allow us to fold it over on the other side of the bike, like so. Grab the whole ECU, kind of rotate it over, just let it rest right there. Really bitching how they did this. You see here, we've got a couple of rubber pads, right? And then if you look back here on the fuel tank, there is a tab. It's welded on, and this essentially slides in between there, okay? So the rubber bumpers are resting in between there, so it isolates it a bit from vibration. Then it mounts up front here to the frame. That is definitely some German engineering. Need to pull this clip out. It's a small flat bladed screwdriver. Kind of carefully separate that. Like so. And grab this. This is just going to be a piece of the ram air duct. Here are the clips that sandwich in the air filter housing. Now you can see we have these two vacuum lines here. All right, and this one on the right side's got quite a bit. This, I think, goes down to the evap canister or something. This has quite a bit of slop in it. This side over here, because of the way it's routed with the ECU harness, it's kind of pulling over on it. And this is going to kind of restrict me from pulling that out. So what I'm going to do is disconnect that up here at the fuel tank, just the vent line. Like so. I'll manipulate that so you now have it in front of this housing. Okay, I'm going to grab this housing and very carefully I want to pull up and release it from its mounting tabs down below. Once you've done that, you can fold this over to the outside. Keep an eye on your ECU connector. It's a little tight, but not too bad. Okay, and pull out your air filter housing like so. Now's a good time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a blowgun and I'm going to clean off the housing before I put the new filter in. I'm going to make sure to get into the air box. I'm going to look in there with a flashlight, also use a blowgun, run some compressed air through there and just make sure we don't have any debris sitting inside that air box. The last thing you ever want to have happen when you're doing a service like this is getting debris in that air box. That opens the possibility for it to suck in the motor. Okay, let's go ahead. And this comes obviously pre-oiled, ready to install. It's sealed in the package. You got your certificate of warranty, ownership, whatever. A couple of stickers if you want to use them. A do not discard sticker. We're not going to use any of that shit. Then you need to install this in the housing. You want to double check the fit and make sure that it's good to go. Should be very exact, right? Very similar to what you see with the OE. This one, of course, is. BMC makes a nice product. And your installation is going to be just a Pretty simple reverse process of what we showed you for the removal. It does take a little bit of pressure to slide this down. Work each side down as evenly as possible. You want to ensure that when you get down here that the clips for the bottom of the housing have slid into position. Let's go ahead and get the retainers here for the air filter housing locked down. Do that on both sides. Look down here, double check, make sure that you have the clips in, which I do. From here, let's get those vent lines rerouted here. Kind of go behind that ridge on the air filter housing. Between there and the frame. This one, we don't need to hook that back up right now. Get that as we're getting closer to the end. Let's go ahead and get this extension. I kind of blew all this stuff off too. Let's get this air filter extension, or the ductwork extension, I'm sorry, slid in there. Make sure it's engaged in the clips, it's all the way seated. Like so. Now we can grab the ECU, roll that back over, and get it into position. Plug that connector back in. What you want to do is you want to put some downward pressure, like so, and then push back on the retainer until you've fully seated it. We'll leave this swinging for a second. Let's make sure we get that slid into that channel. That looks good. Grab the fastener we removed from the front of the ECU. Nice even torque there. Plug that back in, make sure your connector is of course fully seated. Let's get this vent line plugged back into the fuel tank. Like so. All right, and now we're ready to put the shroud back on around our tank. All right, here is that shroud that goes around the fuel tank. Let's kind of get that bad boy into position here. The thing you really want to watch for is there are these two tabs that slide into a slot on either side. I want to make sure you got those lined up. That slid back. Come up front here, make sure that slides over that top hat spacer, like so. And then come back here, and you can see right here, there is a rubber insert, and then you have that clip. A little inward pressure, you feel a positive engagement. Done. It's gonna hold that in place, and now we can put the fasteners that we pulled out back in there. Engineering on this bike is pretty damn impressive. We'll say that. Of the remaining 6 fasteners, they're all shouldered. 4 of them have a shoulder of this height. 2 of them have a shoulder of this height. Those 2 shortest ones are gonna go right on top of the fuel tank here. There's one without a shoulder. It's the longest of the 7. That goes up here in the front, okay? Get everything started finger tight, and then we'll come back, torque it all down. We won't be using a torque wrench on any of this stuff. This is pretty basic, right? These are really small fasteners. No reason to go bananas on these. So what do you guys think? When are we going to be officially out of the Corona apocalypse and riding motorcycles on the racetrack? Let's make predictions for everybody that's watching this video in the comments section. I'm an eternal optimist, right? So you know what I'm gonna pick? I'm gonna pick the middle of May. I think we are gonna be enjoying some kick-ass track time by the middle of May. The sun's gonna come out, little humidity. I think it's gonna help knock this Corona down, kind of like it does with the flu. And we're gonna be able to socially distance from one another at a racetrack and ride these beautiful bikes. Feel free to let me know what you all think. Kind of double check each one of these because this is not my bike. And then we're ready to put the seat back on with the 400-foot long bolts. And our project is done. When you put the seat back on, what I like to do is kind of support the bolts like this. You don't want to scratch your tail section. Kind of push them up and in. Push that thing forward. If you are going to use the screw gun for this, I wouldn't start the bolts like that. Just to be safe. The seat bolts, they're something you pull out a lot and put back in. And the last thing you want to do is get these bad boys cross-threaded and find yourself in a position where you're making a thread repair back here in the subframe. There you go. That is your BMC air filter install in our 2018 STG BMW S1000RR Corona Apocalypse Edition project bike. You have any questions? Leave those in the comment section.